Someone's going to fire me because I forgot to record again. Okay, well, now we're recording.
It's going to have to be you, Rick.
It fires me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried.
We need to
keep bouncing back.
To start trying to remind, we need to make ourselves a sticky note to help remind you.
Okay, so let's dive into lead generation strategy, right? I asked you on Friday to spend some time this weekend really thinking through all the sources of business that we discussed and how, in fact, you were going to create a strategy out of those sources of business, right? And so I asked you to connect that to your appointment number. So if your appointment is one new appointment a week, well, what activities in what sources of business and what activities in each of those sources are you going to focus on to make sure that you obtain that one appointment a week? And so what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just talk with each other for a little bit. I'm gonna break you out into, let's see, I'll break you out into just 6 rooms. So when you see the little notice pop on your screen, just click it. I'm gonna leave you in those rooms for just 5 or 6 minutes. And I want you to just talk with each other around what it is you came up with over the weekend for a lead generation strategy. Just brainstorm with each other. And if somebody struggled, well, help that person move forward and create a strategy. I'm going to bring you back and we're going to have a conversation around what some of your strategies look like. But before we do that as a group, I want you to spend a little time with each other and getting clarity around what you're focused on. Make sense? All right, guys, so it is 5:29. I'm going to bring you back. Well, you know what? There are 4 to 5 of you in each of the rooms. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. So at 5:40, I'm going to bring you back, and you'll have a little 2-minute warning as we go. So as I push this button, you're going to get a button on your screen to go to breakout rooms, and I'll see you back here in 10. Boy, oh boy, you must have been having good conversations in there. No one wanted to come back.
That was fun. That's always fun, always productive.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we will definitely then do it again before we finish tonight, because we're going to start in on some scripts after we get into our sellers, and I can certainly send you back to have some conversations around these scripts. So somebody talk to me about what is it you heard? What did you learn? Who wants to share a lead generation strategy with me, or something they heard or learned from each other in those conversations?
I'll go, Rick.
Yes, Martine.
So one thing that I did actually this past Friday evening was I had a live Instagram live with Tammy at Loan Depot. And we had, I think it was about maybe 18 people watching, and we were online for about 15, 20 minutes just discussing mortgage options, financing options, and if now's a good time to buy. And it, that worked out really well, because then I ended up getting 2 leads from that.
Wow, nice. Very good. So events, right? Events in the age of, bizarro world are oftentimes Zoom events or some version of online events. And what Martine is basically outlining for us is they work, right? They don't have to be complicated. And you put yourself in the path of potential business. Great job. Love that. What else?
I think for the newer agents, it's setting up, the key components of, your own personal branding. So making sure your website's good, your app is set up, your signature and your email is set up with a reference to your app, that you've got the Facebook page done for Facebook business, and, that you start to get familiar with how to post to that. And then ultimately changing all of your social media to reflect your new career. And the one other thing that I shared was I did just a bulk upload of all my contacts into Command with Scott Leroy. So now as I go through is going to be the time where I start to bucket people into people that I'm in contact frequently. I'm not, then by region, and then starting to reach out from there to get information and have that touch point with them.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And so here's what I want to add to what Seth put on the table. All of those things that he mentioned are important. However, I want you to make sure that you're always prioritizing talking with people and being in front of people before almost anything else, right? And I know that sometimes it feels like I'm asking you to do things that are like cart before the horse, where if you don't have some of those backup systems or generation or conversion systems in place, why be in front of people? And my answer to that is, well, because even without that stuff, you all know how to talk, right? You all know how to have a conversation. And so be careful that, and I don't, this is not to say that this is what I heard from Seth, but I have listened to people say, I'm going to do all those things first before I ever have a single conversation about real estate. And then all of a sudden it's like 6 months later and they're still getting ready to get ready because the website's not ready and the this isn't ready and that isn't ready. So just be really cautious around prioritization, right? So your first priority is, how do I get in front of people? Your second priority is, how do I convert those people and or follow up with those people? Your third priority is all the rest of it. Does that make sense? Trust me, because I've been there, right? So my only warning is, be careful that and you know yourselves better than anybody else. If you know that your behavioral profile is somebody who is going to spend a whole lot of time getting ready to get ready instead of diving in and just doing, know that going in, right? Know that going in. Force yourself to take some action steps, even if they feel a little premature, right? Because what will happen is that activity will breed some results, and you'll start to feel good about those results. and you'll want more of those results. So you'll take more of those actions instead of staying stuck in more of a safety mode, right? Marketing in and of itself is a safety mode. So just be careful about that. Right? Remember, your license doesn't say marketing consultant. Your license says real estate salesperson. And the way you succeed as a real estate salesperson is to take action in putting yourself in the path of business. Right? Yes, ma'am, Lisa.
So it's funny, in my group, we talked about some challenges we were having. And one of the challenges I said was exactly what Seth kind of just said, is putting everything together and getting everything organized. I'm one of those people that need to do that. And I realize every single day, I realize I'm not reaching out. I'm not reaching out. Why am I not reaching out? So coming out of that group, this is why I loved it so much. So tomorrow morning, I have 2 hours blocked, and come hell or high water, that's what I'm going to be doing, is reaching out.
Got it. Do me a favor. What are those 2 hours?
No, I was going to start 9 to 11, although I can't do that because I do have a Zoom coaching call. Oh, and I have a Rick Scott Zoom call. So I have an 11 noon to 2, yeah, 11 to 1. I don't know.
Well, here's why I'm asking. As soon as you have that nailed down, do me a favor and text me those 2 times.
Okay.
And just so you know, no one is ever going to unmute themselves ever again after I say this. but you made a point of saying, you know what, I realize that I have to push myself to be in front of more people, to put myself in the path of more opportunity. And so from a coaching perspective, I want to just help you succeed in that. And so if you've made a decision that 11 to 1 tomorrow, and you'll text me later before 8 o'clock with exactly the times that you're going to commit to, what I'm going to respond to you back is, that sounds awesome. Please allow me to help support that. Text me when you start and text me when you finish, right? So that there's some version of you being accountable to somebody other than just you, who knows that what you said is, I'm going to do this, right? And so I'm happy to be that person that says, I'm just going to help you stay accountable to the things that you said that you want to accomplish. Because what I have found is that when that happens, you're far more apt to actually do the do than coming out of a feel-good moment, which is what those breakout rooms provided for some of you, right? It was that feel-good of, I am now going to tackle this tomorrow. And sometimes what happens is you wake up tomorrow and you allow some of that other stuff to kind of creep back in and crowd your day out, and you don't ever get to it. So if you're game for it, Lisa, just send me the times, and I'll make sure that that we're starting and stopping, and at least creating some consistency with, or some accountability around the times that you say you're going to do a certain activity. Would that help?
Oh yeah, I respond very well to that. Now I can't not do it. So.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I'm so proud of what Lisa just did, is that because she also, besides opening it up and saying it out loud to herself and saying it out loud to me, she said it out loud to all of you, right? And I will tell you that as someone who needs as much accountability as any of the rest of you, right? Because I am human just like the rest of you. Every once in a while, for those of you who are on our 9 a.m.s and on our masterminds and on, I will say things to a group of people that some of the leadership team after the call texts me and says, okay, did we discuss doing that? Like, are we really starting that next Wednesday? I'm like, well, we are now, because I just announced it to 45 people. Right. And it's the best way I know how to hold myself accountable to actually getting something done. Instead of just having all these 77 ideas, I'm going to have an idea. I'm going to push it out to you guys, and then we're going to figure it out to make sure that we can perform. Right. I will tell you, it drives your team leaders a little bit crazy when I do it. And yet some of the greatest things that we've done with you guys over the last 8 months since we went into this alternative universe that we're living in, right, came from that, came from having, we talked about it, or we thought about it, or I just woke up one morning and said, this would be cool. And then I just announced it. And then we had no choice but to go and get it done to make sure that we could actually provide it for you. So, so it's kind of a fun way to hold yourself accountable, which is the point of the conversation. Anything else? What other ahas from that, John?
So for me, like timeframes don't always work. I deal more in numbers, because if I say, okay, I'm gonna do these 2 hours, then whatever gets done in that might not sort of be meeting my expectations. So for me, I set like number goals, like 50 calls on expireds per week. And I know that's sort of a lofty number, but it's really only 10 calls a day over 5 days. And if I get caught up with all the expireds and there's not that many in a week, then I'll call all the expireds that I have access to, or, you know, add towns. But so for me, it's more of a numbers thing. And then I know that I do have to set some sort of time frames, but I feel like if I hit numbers, then I'll learn through that practice of like where things should go at what time and better manage my time. So 50 calls, 10 handwritten notes. So I said add 50 contacts into my database a week, add a referral partner per week, set up a smart plan for everyone in my database, you know, depending on how I meet them and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so I love that, and that's, you know, that's a plan, that's a strategy. So one of the things I'll ask you to do is, because it looks like you were reading from something, so would you mind sending that strategy to me? Yeah, so that's great. And so when I have that, and again, if it's not me and it's somebody else in your world, that's fine. I'm just volunteering as, for some of you who are putting things out on the table, simply to every Friday circle back and check in to say, hey, these are the things that you said you were going to accomplish this week. How did that go? What got, if you didn't hit those numbers, what got in your way? How are you going to adjust your time next week to make sure these numbers show up? Right? One of the things that with my private coaching clients, one of the things that they each have to set up is an accountability, well, I'll call it a consequence. It doesn't sound terribly positive, but it's the idea of, you know, self-accountability is tough. Self-accountability is a little bit less tough when you have some version of a consequence, right? And I learned this from a coach a ton of years ago, who asked us. I actually heard him on a stage once working with a different client, and then had a coach do exactly the same thing with me, because I brought it to the table and said, what if we did something like this? And it was a coach by the name of Dr. Fred Gross. And Dr. Gross was on the stage with a mega agent and was talking about this mega agent nearly losing his business. And he almost lost his business because he all of a sudden hit really personal turmoil. He was going through a really terrible, messy divorce. That was not his idea, right? It was his spouse's idea, and he was kind of blindsided by the whole concept of the divorce. And his whole world started to spiral emotionally out of control. And so he told this story where Dr. Gross said to him, okay, so let me ask you this. Knowing that you're going through a bit of a personal struggle right now, do you want to add financial and business struggle to the fact that you have a personal struggle? Or would you like to keep the struggle portion of this program just personal? Right? Because his point was, if you allow that personal struggle to creep in and interfere inside of your business, well, now you have a business struggle. And if that's how you earn a living, well, now you have financial struggle, and now like all your world is falling apart. So do we want to compartmentalize? And he said, yes, I do. Great. So what does it take for you to stay on target with your business? And whatever that number, that activity was, he said, well, I have to communicate with or speak to, 50 people a week in my business to keep my income at certain levels. Or maybe it was appointments, whatever the number was. And Dr. Gross said, okay, that's great. And so how are you going to build an accountability structure around that? And what they decided to do together was Dr. Gross said, okay, so I want you to do two things. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to come up with a dollar amount that if you wrote the check would clear your checking account, and it's enough that it would hurt. Like not just sting, but hurt. And so for this mega agent, that number was $10,000, right? He wasn't in danger of the check bouncing. And if this check got cashed in the way that it was designed to be cashed, it would hurt. Dr. Gross said, okay, great. So I want you to take out your checkbook. I want you to write a check for $10,000. And I want you to write a check to $10,000 to someone that you absolutely would not want to have this money. And what they decided to do was write the check to the new boy toy that the soon-to-be ex-wife was pushing the divorce for. And on top of that, Dr. Gross said, so now you have a check for $10,000 made out to said boy toy. I want you to also write a letter to the boy toy. And I want the letter to say something to the effect of, dear boy toy, I am Karen's soon-to-be ex-husband. Enclosed, please find $10,000, which I encourage you to use to make her happier than I ever could. And so on and so on. And so he did. He wrote this letter that he would never want this guy to have. He wrote the check and he enclosed it all and he sent it to Dr. Gross. Dr. Gross got it, put it in an envelope addressed to the boy toy. And the mechanism to keep him on track was, if you don't produce the daily numbers and let me know by 7 o'clock each night, I drop it into the post office box. And once it drops in the post office box, it's irretrievable. He never missed a day. He didn't have financial and business struggle on top of his personal struggle, because he created an accountability system, a structure inside of his business that he would not cheat on, that he would not give himself a pass on. Now, that is probably the most extreme version of that I've ever heard, right? And yet I've done versions of that myself. I've had contests with people about lead generation and hitting numbers, and have written checks and had the MCA hold on to all of our checks, right? You can write a check to a political party that you would never support, right? If that kind of drives you. We are more motivated by avoiding pain than potential pleasure and success. You got it, Margaret. Good point. Good point. And that example I just gave you, I don't know about the rest of you, but that's a painful description of accountability, right? Why are we on this? Oh, because we were talking about holding yourself accountable, right? And so here's what I've learned over time. If you will outline a strategy that is reasonable and create some kind of accountability structure around that reasonable expectation that you have of yourself, you are far more apt to be successful in hitting those targets each day, each week, each month, whatever you're setting up for yourself. Then if you create a structure, if you create a target that is massive, right? I'm not saying don't shoot for the moon, but what I am saying is get yourself to a point where something closer can be hit consistently, and then up the target, right? if you read the MREA, Gary says, lead generate 3 hours a day. Here's the thing. Most of you will not do that. Most of you haven't done that and will not do it. So why set up a structure that says, I'm going to lead generate and find business for 3 hours every single day, only to set yourself up for failure? I would encourage you to set yourself up for 30 minutes a day. Commit to 30 minutes. Or like John said, if it's not a time period, commit to 3 contacts, right? Something small that you can wake up tomorrow, feel good about doing, and then say, you know what? A victory, success, yay for me. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And then after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of you hitting those smaller numbers consistently, well, now you've built up this confidence that I can do that with my eyes closed. What does it look like if I double that? What if I choose to push towards an hour a day? What if I choose to push towards 6 people or 8 people a day? And step it up such that in 90 days, you're darn close to where you wanted to be back when you started, but you've consistently proven to yourself that you can do it instead of torturing yourself when you set something so large and then fall off the wagon 2 or 3 days in. I've watched it happen over and over and over and over again. Very few people have the self-accountability to just go from 0 to bam, I'm lead generating 3 hours a day. Right? Know thyself. And if that's a struggle for you, don't do it. Commit to 30 minutes and then grow from there, right? I want you to have a victory every single day instead of being frustrated and disappointed that you're not hitting the things that you outlined in your business plan, right? When you attend business planning clinic, we're going to talk some more about that. That's going to be the middle of November. So when we set your business up for 2021, we're going to talk about what that victory is every single day. Because trust me, I have grown businesses both ways. When it feels better, for most people, the results are better because it feels better. Right? I'm not even all that motivated by feeling good. And it works for me too, right? So for those of you who are motivated by feeling good, if it works for me, trust me, it'll work brilliantly for you. For those of you who are not motivated by feeling good, I would encourage you to take a look at simply, when you decide to run, if you've never run before, you don't wake up one morning and go for a 10-mile run. Like that doesn't happen for most people. Right? Because if you've never run before and your goal is to hit 10 miles, well, you're lucky if you haven't keeled over after mile 1, if you've never run before. Right? If you're lifting weights, you don't start benching 400 pounds. You start benching a whole lot less, and then you work your way up. Right? It's the same concept. Make sense? Okay. P.S. That's really good advice I just gave you. I would encourage you to kind of jot that down and underline it, highlight it, circle it, and commit to the half hour. Commit to the smaller piece. Maybe it doesn't feel as sexy as jumping into the whole, oh, look what I can do. But I'll tell you that for most of you, it will be the path towards longer term consistent success, rather than a short burst of doing something and then falling off with the consistency. For some of you, it may be figuring out schedule management, right? Committing to 30 minutes every day is easier from a schedule management perspective than 3 hours a day. All right, I hope that bunny trail was helpful. Any other comments, questions, or concerns about your lead generation strategies? Okay, let's dive into sellers. What time is it? 6:05. All right, so we got 54 minutes left. You with me? Yes? Can survive another 54 minutes? All right.
Yes.
Excellent. So let's switch gears. Let's switch gears and have a conversation around sellers, a conversation around listings. There's an expression in our industry, and that expression is you have to list to last. Somebody tell me what that means. Why do you have to list to last?
Is it possibly because once you're done with your buyer, they close in their home? That's it, pretty much until the next time they're ready to purchase, possibly, versus listing. You can potentially get about 2 to 3 other referrals from that one listing.
Oh yeah, so listings, as Martine expertly outlined for us, listings are a path to everything in this business. Buyers less so, right? Listings are the far more leveraged side of the business. Through listings, what come from listings? Name them specifically. What comes from listings?
Open houses, broker open houses, buyers.
Okay, so buyers, absolutely. Marketing opportunities, right? Because open houses and what else did you say, Christian?
I was to say broker open houses, but I mean that's another marketing opportunity to other brokers.
Exactly right. So you get marketing opportunities which allow you then to attract even more buyers. What else comes from listings?
I would say unrepresented buyers, the same thing. Yeah.
What else?
Time management. It's
Yes, well, certainly there's a schedule management component to being a listing agent that exists differently than when you're working with buyers. I would agree with that. What else?
Repeat clients, assuming you're good at staying in touch.
Yeah, so building that database and some repeat clients. What else besides buyers?
What
Other
about
list-
farming opportunities?
Yes, so listings, right? Sellers come from listings. They come from open houses. They come from the marketing opportunities. I would argue that you also get visibility, right? Name recognition from listings. What else, Bogdan?
Put your name on the sign.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So you get that visibility that you don't get with buyers because it is your name on the sign. It's your name on the open house signs. It's your name on the ads that are run on Facebook or wherever else you're advertising, right? It's your name on the postcards that you might send out to the community once it sells. All of those things, right? So listings ultimately bring you buyers, they bring you sellers, they bring you repeat business opportunities. They bring you that threefer, right? That I took a listing, I'm going to find at least one more listing and at least one buyer to close from that listing. So now instead of just one piece of business and one closing, you have one piece of business that turns into 3 closings, right? Yes, I agree, Bogdan. Confidence. Listings bring you confidence. So all those things, and for what it's worth, and I'm not crapping on the buyer side. However, do you see how few of those things we just talked about actually show up on the buy side? Right? One is typically a result of the other, and it doesn't usually go the other way, at least not for 5 to 7 years, right? When it becomes a listing. So buyers are important to feed a pipeline, and buyers are sometimes a faster path to faster paychecks. And yet the idea of building a listings-based business is massively important if you want growth and longevity in what we do. Questions, comments, concerns?
I will say that having now working with a couple of buyers, it's a very, and not that listing isn't an emotional process, but man, it is time consuming and draining and emotional. And, you just want to shake them and say, well, why don't you love this house? This is perfect for you.
Yeah, so that's a really
That's so
good
true.
point. Right, it's a
especially
really-
in this market.
Yeah, indeed, especially when people are a little bit pressured or feel pressured and stressed out to perform, right? And so you guys bring up a really good point in that how many A buyers can you be working with legitimately at one time? A buyers.
As
A
many
buyers?
as you want.
Maybe 3 or 4.
So I have 3 to 4, I have 4 to 6, I have 5 to 7. Yeah, so I agree that the answer is somewhere in that 5-ish range, right? Somewhere, and depending on your bandwidth, right? That may be 4, it may be 5, right? Depending on your systems, your schedule. How many listing clients can you work with at one time realistically without assistance?
Double that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so minimally double that, right? Minimally double that, maybe even more. So again, it's the listings are the far more leveraged side of the business. And so if you're looking at spending time, you can spend the same amount of time with, say, 15 clients versus 5 clients. You can be pushing towards 15 closings that then grows because you're looking for at least a 2-fer, if not a 3-fer from each of those 15 opportunities, versus the 5 that take up the same amount of time and don't bring you fast returns on that investment in time. Even if you close each of those 5, right? Because there aren't the 2-fers and the 3-fers from that. You have to wait 5 to 7 years till those people look to sell or pass you a referral.
You know what else, Rick? You can
Yes.
also farm out some of the responsibilities. So if you've got a listing, you can have another agent do your open house, but you're not going to have another agent take your buyer around.
Yeah, right. So and here's what's fun. We're going to talk about an opportunity that where you may have someone on the buy side, but you get to leverage on the listing side faster than you do and easier, right? Before you start to parse out than you do on the buy side. We're going to talk about that as soon as we're bridging the gap from our seller unit to our buyer unit. We're going to talk all about that. All right, guys, great answers. And so I hope what you're coming away from this with is your focus, regardless if you've been in the business for 15 minutes or 50 years, your focus from a business building perspective should be on listings. Especially those of you who are looking to launch or relaunch right now, because what does the market have the fewest of right now?
Listings.
Hello, right? One of the fastest ways to make money and to grow a business right now is to secure yourself with a couple of solid listings, because A, they will sell quickly. B, they will bring additional opportunity to you. They'll find some of those buyers that have been eluding you. And you don't have to spend 4 to 6 months marketing the property to find a buyer, because they sell overnight, usually with multiple offers. Let me ask you this, those of you who have been working with buyers, would you rather sit on top of the mountain as the listing agent as people clamor up the mountain, waving their offers at you to try and get theirs accepted? Or do you want to be one of the masses climbing up that mountain, stepping on each other, waving your offer, no me, no me, no me? I know which one I like, right? And that's real right now. Those of you working with buyers, you know that's real. You are stepping over as many people as you possibly can to be the one at the top of the mountain where the listing agent is sitting. You want to get there first. It takes a whole lot less energy to just sit on the mountain, right? Even if you're sitting on 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 different mountains, it takes a whole lot less time and effort and energy to sit on that mountain and facilitate those transactions than to try and be the winner to get to the top of that mountain. All righty. So let's talk a little bit about moving forward with sellers. And what I'd like to do in the interest of time, because we have about 44 minutes left, I want to dive into the scripts that I sent out earlier today. And I want to dive into the scripts prematurely. And I say prematurely because we haven't had a conversation around kind of the process that gets you here. And we haven't had a conversation around some of the tools that you use to get here. But the reason I want to dive into the scripts is because I know from some texts and from some conversations I've had that some of you are ready to have these conversations, and you're kind of waiting for these scripts and this conversation to be able to have them. So I want to make sure that we respect the fact that some of you are looking to dive in and close some business and take some listings. And I don't want to push you off even further. So we're going to dive into these scripts, and then by Friday we'll go backwards and fill in a couple of the holes that we filled in, that we left. Does that make sense to everybody? Do I have your permission to leapfrog over a couple of the conversations that we can just as easily have on the tail end and dive right into the actual conversation? Okay, cool. So from the perspective of diving into the Mastering the Listing Consultation scripts, you were sent out earlier today about a 7 or 8 page document that's going to bring us from kind of the night before your consultation right through to the actual signing of the listing document. What you don't have yet is the actual listing document. That'll be sent on Wednesday. We won't get to it tonight anyway, so so no worries there. But I will go through that entire listing document with you as well, so you know what to expect once someone says yes. Well, let's go through these scripts and have the conversation around what this looks like, with the first piece of that script being what? What are we doing first? What's step number 1?
Confirming.
We're confirming the appointment, right? We're confirming the appointment the night before. So question number 1, why on earth are you confirming the appointment?
So you're not wasting your time.
Yeah, say that again, Lisa, nice and loud.
So you are not wasting your time, which is very valuable.
Indeed, right? And it's funny because I oftentimes have people say to me, well, why would you confirm the appointment the night before? Aren't you giving people the idea or the opportunity to cancel it? Guys, if you're giving someone the idea of canceling it the night before just by calling to confirm the appointment, guess what? They weren't showing up anyway. You were arriving at their house and they weren't going to be home, or it was going to be listed the following morning and you're getting a phone call after the fact, right? You're not giving people the idea. And when you call to confirm, you know now that if in fact they cancel the appointment, you have an opportunity to do what?
Get more leads.
To fill that time with someone who actually is going to do business with you right then and there. What I find is that the idea of calling to confirm appointments has everything to do with mindset. It has everything to do with scarcity versus abundance, right? A scarcity mentality says, I won't call because I feel like a real estate agent because I have an appointment tomorrow. So I don't want to call to confirm it just in case I don't end up having it. A mindset of abundance says, my time is valuable. I'm going to call and make sure that these people are terribly serious and have me in their calendar. And if for some reason they don't answer or don't confirm, I'm moving on and booking somebody else in that time slot, right? Because that's a mindset of abundance. I have more than just that one, or I have the opportunity to have someone who will actually pull the trigger. So don't get caught in your head on that, is my point.
I think you also mentioned this.
Go ahead, Seth.
In the course, it also, if someone's kind of on the edge of whether they want to go through with it, you following up shows professionalism and that you care, and it might drill the point home that you're the right person to represent them.
Exactly right. Remember, I said last week, you are always modeling behavior, right? You're always modeling behavior. And so if you model up the behavior of a professional, are you winning points before they've even had a chance to listen to your whole consultation? I think so. Hey, wait, when you have surgery, Doesn't someone call the night before to confirm the appointment?
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Is it the surgeon?
No.
Not usually. How come?
Afterwards. He's the
He's-
most
He's
important.
busy. Yeah.
Yes, the assistant.
Right? Because the surgeon has people for that. Frankly, if I was having surgery the next morning and the surgeon called me the night before, I think I'd yell at him and say, please stop using your fingers on the phone. I want you to be resting those hands. Why aren't you in bed? Why are you calling me? Right? And so the surgeon has people for that. I'm going to encourage you to use that same idea. And so this script for confirm the appointment, when it's your seller appointment, really isn't for you. It's really for someone that you align yourself with, whether that's someone in your family who's making a phone call for you, or it's someone that you have hired to make a phone call for you, or it's bartering with each other to say, you know what, until I have somebody who I can actually pay to do this for me, I'm going to ask Chelsea to make my confirm appointment calls, and I'm going to do the same thing back for her. We're just going to barter time. Make sense? Here's the thing, when you barter with someone for time, make sure it's somebody who has about the same volume of business that you do, right? So it's equitable. I don't, you know, I'd love to help Chelsea out, but if I have one appointment this month and she has 72, well, now all I'm doing is, maybe that's the reason I only have one appointment, because Chelsea's got so many appointments that I'm constantly on the phone confirming her appointments. I'm not doing any of my own work, right? So try and work with somebody, if you're bartering with each other, that has about the same amount of volume as you, or expects the same amount of volume as you. And here's one thing that's really important. Make sure that you're working with somebody who understands that when they're making this call on behalf of you, it's the way you run your business that they have to fall into, not the other way around. And so what that means is, if Chelsea asked me to make this phone call, she and I are going to have a conversation, and Chelsea's going to tell me exactly what her expectations of me are, how she wants me to deliver this. What happens if someone has a question? What happens if someone cancels? What am I saying to make sure that I'm representing Chelsea's business the way Chelsea wants her business represented, right? And the reason I say that to you before we even read the script is because I've lived in that scenario of having somebody make a phone call for me, and when the seller client said, you know, it seems to me like we don't even have to keep this appointment. I wondered if you could talk to me about the price and the commission right now. And she thought the best thing to do was to start having that conversation on the telephone the night before my appointment. P.S. This was someone I paid. This was my first assistant. I wasn't bartering with anybody, right? Now, that's not on her, that's on me, because that was a training issue. It was a training issue that I missed. So again, it's not on her, that's totally on me. But she went and she did what she thought the right thing to do was, and started answering his questions, and got to a point where the guy was like, okay, well, that sounds good. You know what? Tell Rick I don't need to have an appointment with him anymore tomorrow because you've kind of answered my questions. Oops. Really? I'm certain that's not true, because he didn't say, please have Rick run over so we can sign the papers. He said, please tell Rick not to bother to come tomorrow, right? And what was real about that conversation is that the things that he heard excluded me from the conversation, didn't get me hired, right? And so instead, what I had to teach her to do was, when people were asked those questions, to say things like, you know, those are great questions. I am jotting them down, and I will make sure that Rick is armed with answers for those questions specifically when he meets with you tomorrow at 3. So let's run through this. Somebody volunteer to read the confirm the appointment script out loud.
I'll do it.
Thanks.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
Oh, wait, sorry. So, good afternoon, Mr. Scott. This is Assistant Lisa Lee calling you from Rick's office at Keller Williams Realty. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Good, good. I was just calling to confirm your appointment with Rick tomorrow at 4 p.m. in our office at 123 Main Street. He's very much looking forward to meeting with you to discuss the sale of your home and wondered if there was anything specific that you wanted to be certain that he covered.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of just all the basics. I'm assuming he's going to talk about you know, kind of a marketing plan and some pricing conversations.
Oh, absolutely. I'm certain he'll cover that, but I will make a note and relay that to him before the meeting. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, great. Well, I'll let him know that. And were you able to review the pre-consultation package that was delivered to you?
Yes, I was. Thank you.
And did you have any questions about that?
No, I think pretty self-explanatory.
And also, were you able to complete the seller's homework pages?
You know, I think we've gotten through almost all of that, but we'll make sure to finish that up tonight.
That would be great. Those are very, very helpful. And Rick will look to review those with you when you meet tomorrow to list your home. So he's very excited to meet with you and looks forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 p.m. In the meantime, if there's anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to call, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too. Bye. All right, so what do you hear in that script? Talk to me a little bit about what you hear.
They need to be prepared. Sorry, Patty.
That's okay.
Yeah, preparation, right? So one of the things we're doing, right, and again, we kind of leapt over the pre-consultation, the pre-listing package, but one of the things inside of that pre-listing package is some seller homework. And that seller homework includes things like, what are your favorite parts of this house? If you were staying, what might you change? Give us a long list of improvements that you've done. If we asked you to contribute to the copy that we were writing for your property, what would you say about the house, right? So all little opportunities for them to assist in a partnership manner to get the house sold. We're going to ask for them to do all of that. P.S. There's one piece of seller homework that trumps all the rest of it. Anybody know what that is? Other than having people really start to work in partnership with you. There's one piece that I love the most. What are we asking them for in terms of seller homework? Go ahead, Donna, give it to us.
The disclosure.
A set of 2 keys.
Keys. You got it. Keys. Please be ready with 2 sets of keys when I arrive tomorrow. Why is that the best piece of seller homework?
It implies you're going to be getting the listing.
You got it. It's one of the best assumptive closes out there. And I will tell you that when I arrived for that appointment and they dangled those keys, right? You kind of know that the direction that you're moving in is, I'm taking this listing, right? Because they already kind of made you the keys. Again, you want to make sure that what you're doing in terms of seller homework is that you're engaging with people. So even before you come and sit down and have a consult, they already understand, they're starting to understand how you work, what you do. You're pushing that level of confidence forward. This isn't about if I come tomorrow to list your house. I'm just preparing them for my arrival to take the listing, right? Again, mindset, scarcity versus abundance. Am I arriving with a scarcity mindset saying, oh my goodness, I have to take this, or I can't pay my mortgage next month if I don't get this listing? Or am I coming at this with the confidence of abundance saying, this is what I do and I do it well. There's no reason for them to say no to me. I just have to show up and be the one and I get hired. That's a confident, abundant mindset. What else did you notice about the script?
I liked that it made them feel a little bit like they were in control in terms of making sure any questions were there. The implication is you're not going to waste their time, making sure.
Yeah, you got it. You read that right, Margaret. That is so true, right? It gives, remember, asking questions is how you retain control and have people feel as though they are in control of that conversation. And by asking what's important to you, what's in your head, ultimately, you're troubleshooting any issues before you even get there, right? If there was something specific, I one time had somebody say, well, I hope he's going to be prepared with price per square foot comparisons. And I'm going to tell you, that was something that I never really worked on because we don't really live and work in an area where price per square foot matters all that much, right? We don't live in Boulder, Colorado, where it's 3 versions of the same house, and it's more relevant there. We have a far more eclectic inventory here, and so price per square foot doesn't come up all that often. And yet, because we asked that question and that person said, well, I hope he's prepared for that, I went and made sure I was prepared with price per square foot. By the way, I also never wasn't prepared again with price per square foot, because I figured if one person asked for it, how many other people are expecting it and not asking for it? So I might as well be ready for it and ask the question at the consultation if there's a desire to go down that path, and be ready rather than not be ready. What else? Anything else from this script that you notice?
I noticed that everything went really well. And I hate to be the pessimist, but I feel like that's oftentimes not going to happen.
Sure. So let's do this, Christy. Where do you think it might go differently?
When you ask them if they have their paperwork completed, or basically when it comes to them having to actually, prepare something for you.
Got it. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll tell you what my experience has been. My experience has been that minimally 80% of the time, when you ask the question or when the question is asked, have you completed the seller homework pages, or did you review the pre-listing package? Did you do the seller homework pages? 80% of the time, the answer is yes. Now, maybe 50% of the time of that 80%, it's a lie, right? I'm not saying they've done the work. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of times they will say, yes, we've done it. That they hang up the phone with the confirmation call and say, honey, we have work to do. Did you get that page? Where's that package? Apparently he wants us to do something. Dig that out. So I 100% agree with you, Christy, that oftentimes they haven't done the work, but my experience says that they will almost always tell you that they have, right? Now, in the 20% of the time where they haven't, that can simply look like this. And so were you able to review the pre-consultation package that was delivered to you? No, I know we got it. We just haven't had time. Excellent. Rick will look to have you fill out those seller homework pages and review that documentation when he comes to list the home tomorrow. I'm curious, is that something that you'll be able to address prior to 3 o'clock tomorrow? Right, so it's just another question to indicate how important it is. And I will tell you, I don't know that I've ever had someone, after I've asked if they've done it, if they actually said no, and then followed up with, we're going to need that done before 3 o'clock. Is that something you can get done? Have them say, no, I won't be able to get that done. Right? Because remember, human beings want 2 things. All humans want to look good and be right. And so the last thing they're going to do is make themselves look bad or feel wrong by saying, we're not doing your stupid seller homework. I just haven't had that occur, right?
I think it also showed the like continuity and kind of fluidity that just you and you know, or if you have someone making the call for you, you know, that you're on the same page, that you guys are, you know, so they have that confidence. It isn't scattered. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what our role is and where we should be at in this process.
Yeah. It's part of the system, right? And part of what creates confidence in people is knowing that you're just going through a system. Does that make sense? Right? It goes back to going to a restaurant and having the waiter or waitress write down my order, right? That's a system, and it gives me confidence that I'll get the right thing. If they don't write it down and there's 6 of us at the table, I don't have that confidence, because now it's guesswork whether or not I get the right thing in my head, right? And so this process shows people that this is something we do all the time, and this is just part of the process. Go ahead, Donna.
What I also love about this script right from the beginning, and the scripts that are going to follow, is that you're modeling behavior, like you say all the time. You're modeling behavior about how we are going to work together, and you're taking control of the situation. I mean, they hired you as the professional. You know what you're doing. Some might think they do, and you're going to help them with that, and we're going to move along. But I need you. There are things, Mr. Seller, that Mrs. Seller, you're going to need to do. You are going to need to do as we march through this, starting with politely, you completing the seller homework. You're getting a really clear view of these potential clients, because it isn't just about, are they going to hire you? It's also about, are you going to hire them? Are you going to system? Is this going to be a successful partnership that you want to be part of? Can you help them? And if they follow your direction, that's going to say a lot.
Yeah, well said. Well said, right? Because it is a two-way street. It's definitely a two-way street, right? You want to be certain that from the very launch or relaunch of your business, that your appointments are not, please hire me, please hire me, please hire me, right? That it puts you in a very, very difficult position, right? It's not about winning every time. It's about making choices about being in partnership with the right people. That's really true. And I will tell you, sometimes it takes a while to get there, right? And so what Donna's communicating, and I'm underlining in what she said, is that, again, part of why we're here is to help you shorten that learning curve, right? Too many of us on this call have missed some of the signs, or seen the signs up front and decided to ignore them because we wanted the win with the listing, only to have it become an absolute nightmare and take more time and effort and energy without a real payday in sight, and without being able to actually assist somebody to create the result they were looking for, right? Because the result they were looking for isn't really in the realm of possibility today under today's market conditions, right? So it is always that two-way street, and you're outlining that right from the get-go. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the confirm the appointment script? You see how you're using it? Okay. The next piece is setting the stage, right? And so this, you're pulling these folks into the office to sit down and have a conversation with them. Today, you may be having a Zoom conversation if people aren't coming into the to the conference room to meet with you with their masks on. So either or, you may be on Zoom, you may be in person. Obviously, if you're on Zoom, you're going to adapt the first part of this a smidge, right? Because you don't have an opportunity to get them something to drink, right? You can maybe change that to, do you have everything you need? And any adult beverage and that may help us get through the next 30 minutes or so of conversation. And so let's run through this. Let's assume that we are in person. And again, if it's a Zoom scenario, you just change those first couple of lines to make sense. But let's run through this really quickly and get to the bottom and then kind of go back and break it down, because this is a really important piece of you setting the stage for how this entire appointment is going to go. Is it all right if I take this one as the agent? Would you mind? Okay, so somebody just decide to unmute and give me the answers that I need from the seller's perspective, right? You don't have any scripts. You can just make them up. Who's doing that for me?
Oh, I unmuted.
Oh, great. Okay, so Chelsea. So Chelsea, how are you? How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. Did you find us okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So listen, before we get started, can I offer you something to drink, some coffee or water or anything?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, well, perfect, perfect, perfect. So if you want to just have a seat here, listen, we have a lot of exciting things to discuss today. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to just jump right in and get started. Would that be okay?
Yep, that sounds great. I can ask some questions at the end.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Any questions you have, feel free when they pop up.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So Chelsea, look, I have a great deal of respect for the investment of your time this evening. In fact, we only really have 3 goals tonight. Number 1, we're going to review your motivation to sell this house now and agree on a price that will cause it to sell. Number 2, we'll take a moment and I'll answer any questions that you may have. And number 3, we'll decide tonight whether you want to hire me. Does that make sense?
Yep, that sounds great.
Okay, excellent. So I have 3 critical questions for you in order for us to take the next steps. 1, do you really want to sell your house?
Yes, we need to move.
Okay, perfect. Number 2, are you willing to price your house to sell, or do you want it to sit on the market?
Well, we'd like it to sell, but we certainly have, a number in mind.
Understood, understood. And number 3, do you want me to handle the sale for you?
I think it sounds like you're, you're experienced and, it might be a great thing to work with you to have you handle this.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's stop there. Let's go back to the top. Let's just break this down a little bit. I can see some of the, well, let's just go through it. Let's go through it. And then you tell me your thoughts about what you liked, what you didn't like, and what seemed right and what seemed maybe a little Pollyanna. So clearly that first piece is just an intro piece, right? You're meeting them in the conference room, or you're meeting them at the front of the office and walking them to the conference room. So it's just chit chat, right? It's just getting you to be seated across from them to be able to start the conversation, right? Some of you are great at small talk. I never was. So the reason you have this kind of stuff in your scripts is because for those of you who are not great at small talk, I wanted to give you just some conversation to alleviate the stress of having to have some small talk, right? Because that always gave me like heart palpitations. Like, what am I going to say to these people who I don't know, right? For those of you who are good at that, you hear that and think like, what is wrong with this person? For those of you who are not good at that, you understand that that can be kind of stressful, right? If you're not good at that kind of thing. And some of you just behaviorally are better at that than others. I was one of those people who wasn't all that good at it. So again, I scripted it out to give myself confidence in what I was going to say. And so it was the same, just by the way. That script was the script. It was the same. Did you find us okay? Can I offer you something to drink? It was the same every single time, because that was my level of confidence. So once we start the conversation, paragraph number 3, we have a lot of exciting things to discuss. Is it okay if I just jump right in? Why is that important?
You're taking control.
So yes, I love that as because you are, right? You're asking a question that keeps you in control, right? We're going to jump right in. Would that be okay? What else?
I also liked if they were nervous, you're framing it like this is going to be a great conversation. It's going to be exciting.
There we go, right? So taking anybody who has any level of anxiety, maybe down a peg or two by kind of showing them that they have energy, right? Energy and excitement. If you remember, one of the things that Barbara Baufman, who was on the calls, some of the calls last week, told you was that just by being passionate and excited with a for sale by owner, she took a listing because that person liked her passion and excitement, right? So sometimes the one with the most passion and excitement wins the day. What else does that jumping right in accomplish?
It respects their time.
Yeah, it absolutely, Karen, it respects their time, right? Remember, if you're having people meet you in the office, oftentimes they have kids at home that are now with a babysitter, right? Or they've pulled themselves away from homework time or family time or whatnot, right? And you have to make certain that you're moving this quickly, because as scintillating as we all are, believe it or not, most people want to kind of come and have a meeting with you, right? This is a business meeting that they're having with you. You're not meeting for drinks and chatting about vacation. Oh, vacation. Remember vacation? I barely remember vacation. Soon. The other thing I'll underline for you is that sometimes people make a mistake. And they make a mistake by thinking that having chatty conversation in the beginning of all this creates rapport. Do you ever hear about, make sure that you create rapport, make sure that you strike up some conversation to create rapport? Well, here's what I've learned is that a lot of times in a business scenario, and this is a business conversation, people are more interested in you creating business rapport. And business rapport says that you're going to respect their time, get down to the business at hand, not be cold and standoffish, right? But ask the question, is it okay if we get right down to business? Because 75% of the time, you're going to win points with people who, again, have left children at home or who just aren't interested in spending a ton of time in the realtor's conference room. They'd like to get the information and either, sign the papers or go home, one of the two, right? So remember that you're creating business rapport, and business rapport is not the same as how are you? How's it going? I love your shoes. Where'd you get them? Hey, how are the kids? That's not to say that if you have a personal relationship with someone, you shouldn't start personally. Right? So you may have to insert something in this script if you know the people personally. I wouldn't insert a lot because, again, you want to treat people as the same as possible. And one of the big mistakes I see people make is they treat their friends differently than strangers. What I would say to you is friends versus strangers ultimately may come with, hey, I know it may sound kind of dorky, but what I'd like to do is really dive into the business end of this, and we can catch up on X, Y, or Z after the fact, right? Again, I want to respect your time and make sure that you are treated like the important VIP client that I know you to be. I used to just put it out there with my friends to say, you know what, maybe this sounds stupid. Maybe this sounds dorky. Maybe you don't expect me to say this. But I want to make sure that you're hiring, that you're hiring a real estate professional, not just your friend. Anything else on that? Christy, go ahead.
I just have a couple of thoughts. While I completely agree with you, I just sometimes feel like it's more about like reading the client or potential client, and I kind of like how they are, and if they are kind of into that, a little bit of like chitter chatter before kind of like just jumping into, the business side of it. Sometimes you could feel like you could sense right away if they're just like, all right, let's do this and get it done. Or, I have time for, a little bit of talk.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that you remember a lot of this is living truthfully in what might seem like scripted scenarios, right? And so living truthfully inside of that is if somebody comes in and is a total chatty Cathy and you shut them down, well, now you're doing the opposite of building good business rapport, right? You run the risk perhaps of insulting them. So reading them 100%. And again, if you know these folks, you may know their behavioral style better than not. What I would say, however, is read them by, remember, sometimes you've only actually walked them from the front desk to a conference room and you've started into this conversation, because this is one of the first things we ask. One of the ways you can read them is by their answer to that question, right? So there's two different paths there. What else, Christy?
Just the other question I had was, is it ever appropriate when the phone call to confirm the appointment or anything, is it appropriate to ever say, you can expect to be here for an hour or an hour and a half? Like, is it ever right to kind of put a time limit around it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And my answer to that is certainly if they ask, right? And I'll give you a script that I used to use for that. And you could certainly choose if you wanted to insert that and let people know ahead of time what they could plan for. I don't necessarily see a downside to that. My script, when people would ask, how much time on a listing consultation or a buyer consultation, was always the same: 30 to 40 minutes longer if you have questions, right? Because basically you can get through the basic tenets of these scripts, of this whole process, in about that 30 to 40 minute time. Now, do they oftentimes have questions? Yes, right? And so it may then go to that 45, 50 hour long piece. But one of the things that this process does is it does serve to try to look to shortcut some of the time here. And I will tell you the reason for that. And it's because people don't need to have us yammering at them for 2 hours, right? I will tell you in all transparency that in my early days, my listing consultations, because what I thought my job to do was, I thought that what people wanted from me was to make sure I covered absolutely everything there that was possible to be covered, right? And I didn't want to leave anything out, right? I'm kind of that guy who overthinks things and says, okay, well, in order to not miss anything, I'll just make sure that the consultation, which really for me in the early days was more of a presentation, right? Those are two different things, by the way. A presentation is when you do most of the talking. A consultation is when you ask great questions and the client gets to participate in a dialogue, right? So one's more monologue, one's more dialogue. And so in my early days, I absolutely did the monologue version of that. And it got to the point where my consultations were 2.5 to 3 hours long in their house. Because in those days, I wasn't pulling people into the office. So in their house, I am almost certain that I took a number of listings in the beginning simply because they thought, you know what, maybe if we just sign this guy's piece of paper, he'll leave, because I don't know how else to get rid of him. He just won't stop, right? And I think back on those days and think, God, what a disservice I was doing, not just to the client, but to myself, because I didn't recognize that consultation is all about asking great questions and building that partnership throughout the conversation, right? That's how you win people over. Why am I telling you this story? Christy, what was your question?
No, it was relevant. Your point was relevant.
Okay, good.
It was about kind of setting the expectation about the timing of
time. That's right. So So 30 to 40 minutes more if you have questions is a way to kind of wrap that answer into something that makes sense, that isn't a lie, right? Because it is 30 to 40 minutes. If you have no questions and I'm your guy, well then zippity doo dah, we're good in 30 to 40 minutes. If there are more questions or if there's any kind of struggles, well, it may take a little bit longer. So, and to Christy's point, if you so choose, you could add that into the appointment setting script if you thought it made sense to give people parameters. Sometimes that's the question that they ask when you're doing the confirm the appointment, and you could add that in there if you wanted to proactively give them that time.
There was like the Kirby vacuum guys that come in.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is it common?
Yes, hold on. John, I'm going to mute you. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ann.
Is it common for them to commit at the evening, or should it be okay for them to say, well, we'd like to think about it? Or are you really trying to get them to like sign before you leave?
Yeah,
I mean, I know you're.
Yeah, my goal is always to close, right? My goal is
and
to close.
if they say, well, we'd like to think about it, what are you saying?
Well, there are objection handlers for that. You know, and so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to give it some thought. Is how much time did you think you'd need? Is there opportunity for me to kind of step out so you guys can discuss? I can just head out to the car for a few minutes and you know, make a quick phone call and then head back in. So I would ask if me stepping away was enough time for them to talk, right? And sometimes they would say yes, and sometimes they would say no. And if they
say like, well, we're calling a number of agents, we're diligently interviewing each of them. Clearly, we're not doing that all tonight.
Got it. And so, you know, what I hear, Mrs. Callie, when people tell me that they're interviewing a bunch of agents, it tells me that maybe some of the things that we discussed this evening weren't as clear as I perceived them to be. So so let me just take a half step back. Is there anything that we need to review a second time for clarity around this process? Go ahead, play with me a little, Ann.
No, I mean, you know, we just want to get a feel for what different agents have to say, you know, what they bring to the table. We just haven't gone through our, you know, we've lined up several appointments and they're going to be unfolding over the next few days. And, you know, unfortunately, you happen to be the first one.
Sure.
And so we'd really like to have the opportunity, you know, this is a very big decision. A lot of the things that you said make good sense, but we'd really still love to have the benefit of the doubt. We're very diligent thinkers. And we just like to have the opportunity to really see who we think matches up with us the best.
Got it. And so let me ask this. When you say you're looking to find someone who matches up with you the best, does that have to do with the marketing and exposure program? Does it have to do with pricing, or does it have to do with personality?
It's a number of different things.
If you had to rate those three things, which would be most important to you?
We just want to better understand how much experience you have in this market, in this price range. Like this, you know, our house is on the high end. You know, we'd like to see how much experience you have there. Reputationally, we like to do our due diligence. We'd like to maybe go see some reviews, check out some websites. We really just want to see, and part of it really is also a personal match too. So there's a number of different factors that we're really kind of wanting to address, but we can't really get to that point until we've met everyone. Is that fair?
Sure. And at that point, I would stop objection handling it, right?
Okay.
Because clearly there are some people who again, not all objection handlers move people in the direction that you're looking to move them in, and we want to interview other people. So first of all, for me, it's funny because there's people who choose. One of the qualification questions I would always ask is, are you seeing other people, right? And if they said yes, great. Can you tell me who? And sometimes they would share that with me, and sometimes they wouldn't. And so if I knew they were seeing other people, because I knew how to close, I would always ask to be first. I would always ask to be first. Because if you know how to close and you're first, you rarely get the objection that Ann put on the table that you can't overcome with a couple of let's go backs. Right? Rarely. And my concern about being last, because a lot of people tell me, oh yeah, I like to be last. I'm going to tell you what, because I lived this as a listing agent. I always asked to be first. And more times than not, I was making phone calls, right? Because the objection handler that I just simply chose not to pursue because we're oh wow, we're over time. All right, so let me just finish this conversation and we'll close. More times than not, I would ask the sellers if in fact it would make sense to go ahead and hire me this evening to save themselves time and effort and energy, knowing full well that the industry ultimately has foundational levels of service. And if you're interviewing 3 different agents at that foundational level of service or above, would it surprise you to know that we all pretty much do the exact same thing? Because I can tell you now, and some of you may argue with me on this, that is a fact. We don't, it's not because we're at Keller Williams, we do all this brilliant stuff that nobody else does. We do all the same stuff that everybody else does. And so in a scenario where people were continuing to say, I want to see more people, part of my objection handlers were to go to the idea that we all do the same stuff. It's like the unwritten secret in real estate, right? Can I tell you a secret? We all do the same stuff. Well, even if that's the case, we want to make sure that the price you brought us is correct. Okay, except when we get through this process, what you'll see is that I don't bring them a price. I bring them data and they determine the price, right? So help me understand how that will be different with someone else, right?
And in some cases, they're bargaining on your fee. They're like, well,
right.
how low will you go?
And so
if
sometimes
you don't want to go there, and someone undercut us so to the margin, we just had to walk away. I mean, it wasn't even worth the business.
Yeah, agreed. And sometimes that's the case, right? There are some people who are willing to work for a sign. I was rarely one of those people, right?
Yeah. And if it comes to that, then you're just walking away.
Exactly. And the idea, and that's a decision that each of you can make, right? And so the idea of getting to a point of me offering to call the other agents, right? And again, because I could close more times than not, I was objection handling the conversation and closing at the table when I was first, only to have me then step outside and make phone calls to the other agents they were going to see, just to let them know that I had listed the property and they either had the night off or the day off tomorrow. Because what I found is that a lot of people wanted to see other people only because they didn't want to have to make the phone call and cancel the appointment because they felt bad. So I would use some isolation techniques to say, okay, so let's break this down. Is it commission based? Is it price based? So other than X, are you ready to hire me this evening? Well, yes. Okay, well, let's see if we can't come to an agreement on this. And sometimes it was other than you not wanting to cancel the other appointments that you have with other agents. Are you ready to hire me this evening? Well, yes, we feel bad. Great. So let me go to work for you right away. Let me go to work for you before you've even signed the listing agreement. While you're working on this paperwork, let me step outside and call the other agents and just cancel those appointments on your behalf so that you don't have to worry about doing it. And I did that all the time. Margaret.
So I'm looking at the script. At what point do you ask the 3 critical questions? Because it felt like just when you were acting it out with the seller that you asked to handle the sale, but you hadn't really done your presentation yet. But maybe I had the timing wrong.
Yeah, no, you have that 100% right. And because, again, I want to be respectful of your time because we're 5 minutes over. And so we will pick up there first thing on Wednesday, but you didn't hear it wrong.
Okay.
That the bottom of this page, after 3 minutes or 4 minutes with the client, is the first close for the business. And we're going to talk about the validity of that and the effectiveness of that when we see each other on Wednesday. Guys,
Okay.
don't forget that Wednesday we're back to 4 o'clock. So 4 o'clock on Wednesday. I appreciate the extra 5 minutes. I will look forward to seeing each of you on Wednesday or tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on our Crush It call, whichever comes first.
Thank you. Good night.
See ya.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.